I watched her set down her ring and ask for 30 days. So I stayed calm, gathered proof, invited witnesses, and ended marriage before her script ran. The gleam of metal caught my eye as she placed her wedding ring on the kitchen counter. Not thrown in anger, not lost by accident, but deliberately set down with the precision of someone making a statement. "I need space to think about us," she said, her voice steady as if rehearsed. 30 days without this ring to figure out if what we have is what I truly want. My mind raced through 5 years of marriage, calculating the true weight of her words. This wasn't an impulsive decision. The timing coincided perfectly with her recent late nights at the office and sudden password changes on her phone. I didn't speak immediately. The old me would have begged, questioned, pleaded for an explanation. Instead, I studied her expression, noticing how she seemed disappointed by my lack of visible panic. 30 days, I repeated, my voice unnervingly calm. "And what exactly do you plan to do with this freedom?" She launched into a prepared speech about personal growth and independence. Classic deflection. Meanwhile, I noticed how she checked her phone, despite it being face down on the table, how her fingers fidgeted without the ring, how her eyes never quite met mine for more than a second. "You've already made your decision," I stated, rather than asked. "This isn't a break. This is a test to see how much disrespect I'll tolerate." Her expression shifted from confident to defensive, confirming everything. "You're overreacting. This isn't about another person. I just need—" "Stop," I interrupted. "I'm not interested in the script. You want 30 days without that ring? Take them. But understand what you're risking." She wasn't expecting this response. The slight widening of her eyes told me she had anticipated tears, bargaining, perhaps even anger. My composure clearly unsettled her carefully constructed narrative. "While you're finding yourself," I continued, standing up, "I'll be doing the same. But don't expect me to wait around while you explore your options." "That's not what this is about," she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. I nodded toward her naked ring finger. "Actions speak louder than words, and that empty finger is screaming volumes right now." The atmosphere in our kitchen had transformed from her staged intervention to my calculated response. For perhaps the first time in our relationship, she looked uncertain, as if suddenly realizing she had misjudged the situation entirely. I didn't slam doors or raise my voice. I simply walked to my home office and closed the door quietly behind me. Through the wall, I could hear her making a phone call, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. That night, I began making calls of my own, not driven by emotion or impulse, but with the strategic precision of someone who refuses to be a pawn in someone else's game. She wanted 30 days without her ring. I was giving myself 30 seconds to remove her from my life. The chess pieces were now in motion. But unlike what she expected, I wasn't just another piece on her board. I was about to change the entire game. Morning came with the practiced normalcy of someone who had already decided their next move. I watched her prepare for work with unusual attention to detail, extra time on makeup, a dress she'd saved for special occasions, perfume applied with calculated precision. She kissed me goodbye with rehearsed affection, unaware that I'd been awake for hours planning. As soon as her car left the driveway, I began my investigation, not out of jealousy or desperation, but with the calculated focus of a man who refuses to be made a fool. Her laptop password, our anniversary date, took seconds to crack. Sentiment had made her predictable. The evidence appeared within minutes, messages between her and a colleague from work, not explicitly romantic, but filled with the unmistakable tension of two people circling each other. Phrases like, "when the timing is right," and "complicated situations require patience," told me everything. The 30 days wasn't about finding herself. It was about testing waters elsewhere while keeping me as a safety net. I took methodical screenshots, sent them to myself, then returned everything exactly as I found it. Next came financial preparations. I called my bank and started the process of separating accounts. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in protecting assets during divorces and scheduled an immediate consultation. "You'll want to gather documentation," the lawyer advised during our meeting. "Bank statements, property deeds, anything showing your contributions to shared assets." For 3 hours, I combed through files and organized evidence of my financial contributions to our life together. Not once did emotion overtake strategy. This wasn't about revenge. This was about self-preservation. That evening she returned home later than usual, smelling of restaurant wine and wearing the subtle glow of someone who'd enjoyed attention. I greeted her with measured warmth, careful not to reveal my knowledge or intentions. "How was your day?" I asked, noticing how she subtly checked her ring finger before answering, as if reminding herself of her newfound freedom. "Busy," she said. "Just meetings and paperwork." The lie rolled off her tongue effortlessly. "How about yours?" "Productive," I replied truthfully. "Very productive." Over dinner, she mentioned the 30-day arrangement again, explaining how she'd told a few friends about our temporary situation, testing the waters, gauging my reaction. "And what did they think about it?" I asked, maintaining eye contact that made her shift uncomfortably. "They understood," she said. "Said it's healthy to reassess sometimes." I nodded slowly. "And what about your colleague, the one you've been working late with? Did you discuss it with him too?" The flash of panic in her eyes was brief but unmistakable. "Why would you ask that?" "Just curious about who knows our private business," I replied, taking a deliberate sip of water, letting the tension build. She launched into a defensive explanation about professional boundaries and how I always misunderstood her work relationships. I listened silently, studying her increasingly agitated gestures, the way she over-explained simple interactions. After dinner, I retreated to my home office again, leaving her to wonder about my unusual calmness. Through the walls, I heard her pacing, then making another hushed phone call. The chess game continued. While she thought she was making bold moves with her 30-day freedom, I was quietly positioning pieces for a checkmate she wouldn't see coming until it was too late. 7 days into her 30-day freedom experiment, the dynamics between us shifted noticeably. My continued composure clearly unnerved her. She'd expected begging, emotional outbursts, desperate attempts to win her back. Instead, she faced a man who matched her emotional distance with strategic precision. "You've been different lately," she remarked over breakfast, studying me with newfound wariness. "Almost like you don't care about our agreement." I glanced up from my coffee. "I respect your choices. I'm simply making my own." This was not the answer she wanted. The slight furrow in her brow betrayed her confusion. She'd orchestrated this scenario, expecting to hold all the power, to watch me grovel while she explored options with her colleague. My refusal to play by her rules was disrupting her carefully constructed narrative. Later that evening, she initiated physical intimacy for the first time since removing her ring. I recognized the tactic immediately, sex as a means of reasserting control, of testing her hold over me. "Brofer," I politely declined. "I thought we were taking 30 days to reassess," I said calmly. "Mixing signals seems counterproductive." Her expression hardened. "So, you're punishing me now?" "Not at all," I said, "just respecting the boundaries you established." My tone remained measured, reasonable. "Unless the rules have changed." The question hung between us, forcing her to confront her own contradictions. She retreated without answering, visibly frustrated by my refusal to engage on her terms. The next morning, I discovered she'd left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter while showering. An obvious plant meant for me to find. The screen displayed innocent conversations with female friends, conveniently open as if to prove her fidelity. The transparent manipulation was almost insulting. When she emerged from the bathroom, she watched me from the doorway, clearly expecting to catch me snooping through her phone. Instead, I continued making breakfast, never glancing at the device. "Your phone's on the counter," I mentioned casually. "Might want to lock it, bro." Her strategy shifted again after this failed attempt. She began mentioning her colleague in conversation, describing lunch meetings and after-work drinks with practiced nonchalance. Classic triangulation, creating jealousy to regain leverage. "He has such interesting perspectives on relationships," she remarked pointedly during dinner. "Very modern views about commitment and personal freedom." I nodded thoughtfully. Good to have someone to discuss these things with. I've been having similar conversations with my lawyer. The fork in her hand froze midway to her mouth. "Bro, your lawyer? Why would you be talking to a lawyer?" "Just getting perspective," I replied with the same casual tone she'd used to discuss her colleague. "Like you said, it's good to explore options during these 30 days. Her face drained of color, the power dynamic shifting dramatically. For the first time, genuine fear replaced calculation in her eyes. She hadn't anticipated that my calm exterior masked methodical preparation. That night, she attempted a different approach, feigning vulnerability through tears, and reminiscing about our early relationship. I listened patiently but maintained emotional boundaries, refusing to be drawn into comforting her. When she finished, I simply wished her good night and went to sleep in the guest room. Through the wall, I heard her frustrated pacing, followed by the urgent tapping of text messages. Her playbook was running out of effective strategies, each failed manipulation exposing the hollowness of her 30-day charade. The following morning, her ring reappeared on the bathroom counter, not worn, but prominently displayed where I would notice it, a silent offering, a test to see if I would mention it or celebrate its return. I said nothing, continuing preparations for the endgame that she still couldn't see coming. 2 weeks into her 30-day experiment, we had dinner plans with mutual friends, a gathering she'd arranged with suspicious enthusiasm. I'd known her long enough to recognize when she was setting a stage. This dinner wasn't about socializing, it was about public perception. I dressed with deliberate care that evening, choosing the watch she'd gifted me on our last anniversary, a calculated detail she would notice. Her surprise when I emerged from the bedroom was visible. She'd expected neglect, not meticulous presentation. The restaurant she'd chosen was upscale, the type of place where appearances matter. Our friends greeted us with the awkward warmth of people who'd been told about relationship troubles, but weren't sure which side to take. I noted how she'd arrived early, undoubtedly to control the narrative before I arrived. "We were just discussing your situation," one friend mentioned as I sat down. "Sounds like you two are working through some interesting changes." I smiled, maintaining perfect composure. Change is inevitable in any relationship. The question is how you navigate it. Throughout dinner, she performed for our audience, touching my arm while laughing too loudly at jokes, reminiscing about our relationship with selective nostalgia, all while conspicuously displaying her ringless finger whenever she reached for her wine glass. Then came the strategic strikes, subtle comments designed to diminish me publicly. "He's been so busy with work lately," she remarked with practiced concern. "Sometimes I wonder if he even notices I'm there." Our friends shifted uncomfortably. "Brr," I simply nodded, taking a deliberate sip of water. "The emotional labor of maintaining a relationship often falls on one person," she continued, warming to her theme. "Sometimes you need space to evaluate if it's worth the effort." Instead of defending myself, I merely smiled. Perspective is valuable. "Speaking of perspective, we should tell them about that promotion I received last week." Her expression faltered. I hadn't mentioned any promotion to her. There wasn't one, but our friends wouldn't know that. The small lie served its purpose, disrupting her narrative control. "A breakup promotion?" she asked, clearly thrown off balance. "We can discuss the details later," I replied smoothly. "Today's about enjoying good company." The dinner continued with her increasingly desperate attempts to regain conversational control. Each time, I redirected with calm precision, never rising to her provocations. Bro." On the drive home, her facade finally cracked. "What was that about a promotion?" she demanded. "What was that about emotional labor and not being noticed?" I countered, my voice level but firm. She launched into accusations about me embarrassing her, twisting the narrative as if her public undermining had been innocent conversation. I let her finish before speaking. "I received a call from your colleague's wife yesterday," I stated calmly, keeping my eyes on the road. The sudden silence in the car was deafening. Her breathing changed, becoming shallow. "Brie, what did she want?" she finally asked, her voice unnaturally high. "To compare notes," I replied. "Turns out we've both noticed some interesting patterns." Another lie, but one that hit its mark perfectly. Her phone was in her hand, instantly, panic evident in her hurried movements. "Don't bother warning him," I said. "We've already had quite a thorough conversation." We drove the remaining miles in complete silence. Abra once home, she immediately retreated to the bathroom with her phone. I could hear her urgent whispers through the door as I calmly hung up my jacket. Later that night, she attempted damage control, approaching me with practiced vulnerability. "I think we need to talk about where this is going," she began carefully. I nodded thoughtfully. "I agree completely. In fact, I've arranged for us to have that conversation properly tomorrow evening." "What do you mean?" Wariness had replaced her artificial vulnerability. "I've invited a few people to help facilitate the discussion," I explained casually. "People who deserve clarity just as much as we do." Fear flashed across her face as she realized she was no longer directing this play. The 30-day experiment was about to reach its conclusion far sooner than she had planned, and with an audience she never anticipated. The next day unfolded with the precision of a military operation. While she was at work, I made the necessary arrangements. By early evening, our living room had been transformed into a courtroom of sorts, not with excessive drama, but with calculated purpose. I invited only 4 people: her parents, her sister, and her colleague's wife. Not our friends who might take sides or be manipulated, but the people whose opinions actually mattered to her, the people whose respect she couldn't afford to lose. When she arrived home and saw the cars parked outside, confusion crossed her face. When she entered and saw the gathering, that confusion transformed into naked panic. "What's happening here?" she demanded, her voice betraying the fear beneath her anger. "The conversation you wanted," I replied calmly, "about where this is going." Abra, her sister, approached first, concern evident. "We're worried about you, about both of you." Her father, a man of traditional values who had welcomed me into their family, looked between us with evident disappointment. "Your husband says you have something important to discuss." She shot me a venomous glare before attempting to regain control. "This is completely inappropriate. Whatever issues we have are private." "Like the 30-day break from your marriage?" I asked quietly. "The one you've already told your friends about?" Her mother gasped softly. I hadn't shared this detail with them beforehand, allowing her the dignity of explaining it herself. That opportunity was now evaporating as her face contorted with rage and embarrassment. "You had no right to bring them into this," she hissed. "Actually, I think we've all earned the right to be here," said a voice from the corner. Her colleague's wife stepped forward, phone in hand, "especially since my husband and I are having remarkably similar conversations lately." The blood drained from her face as she realized the full extent of what was happening. This wasn't just about exposing her. It was about removing any possibility of her controlling the narrative afterward. "Perhaps you'd like to explain why you decided our marriage needed a 30-day evaluation period," I suggested, my voice reasonable, controlled. "Or maybe why your colleague's wife found messages between you two discussing how to leave your respective spouses." The silence that followed was absolute. Her father's expression hardened. Her mother covered her mouth. Her sister stepped back, as if distancing herself physically from the revelation. "Those messages were taken out of context," she began, her voice shaking. "We were just talking about how I'm emotionally unavailable," I interrupted, "about how he understands you in ways I never could, about meeting at that hotel to continue the conversation in person." With each question, I produced a printed screenshot, passing them not to her, but to her family members. Not all the evidence, just enough to make the truth undeniable. "This is an invasion of privacy," she sputtered, switching tactics from denial to offense. "No," her colleague's wife countered quietly. "This is the consequence of betrayal." What followed wasn't the emotional meltdown she might have expected. I didn't raise my voice or make accusations. Instead, I calmly outlined the facts. The 30-day break, coinciding with increased communications with her colleague, the hotel receipts I discovered, the lies about working late. Her family listened in stunned silence. When I finished, I simply handed her father an envelope. "These are the divorce papers my lawyer prepared," I explained. "I've already signed my portion." Her attempts to regain control became increasingly desperate. Tears, accusations of my alleged emotional distance, claims that I had driven her to seek connection elsewhere. But with each attempt, her family's expressions grew more distant, the colleague's wife more resolute. "I'll be staying with my brother until you've had time to make arrangements," I continued, revealing the packed bag by the door that she hadn't noticed upon arrival. "You have 30 days to decide what you want to do with the house. After that, it will be handled through our attorneys." As I moved toward the door, she grabbed my arm, finally abandoning the calculated manipulation for raw panic. "You can't just throw away 5 years like this," she pleaded, loud enough for everyone to hear. I looked at her ring finger, still conspicuously bare, then met her eyes with calm finality. "I didn't," I replied. "You did that 30 days ago. Ibra's 6 months transformed more than just the seasons. My brother's spare room had been a temporary refuge for only 3 weeks before I secured my own apartment closer to my office. The divorce proceedings moved with the efficiency of my attorney and the reluctance of her delaying tactics, exactly as I had anticipated. Her attempts to reach me followed a predictable pattern. First came rage, scathing text messages and voicemails accusing me of public humiliation. I responded to none of them, having instructed my attorney to handle all communication. Her fury at being unable to provoke a reaction was evident in increasingly desperate messages. The second phase arrived right on schedule, bargaining. Mutual friends conveyed her pleas for a conversation just to talk things through. One even delivered a handwritten letter filled with promises of change and acknowledgement of mistakes, carefully worded to admit emotional distance, but never the physical affair. I read it once, then filed it with my attorney as evidence of her manipulative patterns. No response was necessary. The colleague disappeared from her life almost immediately after our confrontation. His wife had apparently chosen a similar path to mine, decisive action rather than emotional pleading. Without her safety net, my soon-to-be ex-wife found herself facing consequences she'd never anticipated. Her social circle contracted as friends quietly distanced themselves. Her family, especially her father, maintained a coolness that she mentioned repeatedly in messages to mutual acquaintances. The carefully constructed image she had maintained was unraveling thread by thread. Professional success became my focus, channeling energy previously wasted on a broken relationship into career advancement. The promotion I had fabricated at dinner became reality 3 months later, bringing with it not just financial benefits, but the recognition I had earned through dedication and strategic thinking. "You've been different lately," my boss remarked during the promotion meeting. "More focused, more decisive." I simply nodded. Clarity has a way of sharpening perspective. Brewery. My personal transformation extended beyond career advancement. I established a rigorous fitness routine, reconnected with friends I had neglected, and even started dating casually, all with the deliberate intentionality of a man who understood his worth. When we finally met again, it was in our attorney's office to finalize asset division. She had lost weight, not in the healthy way I had, but with the hollowness of someone whose plans had collapsed around them. The designer clothes and careful makeup couldn't hide the defeat in her eyes. "You look good," she offered during a break in proceedings, her first words directly to me in nearly 6 months. "I am good," I replied simply, not unkindly but firmly closing the door on further conversation. The final phase of her attempts came 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized. She appeared at my apartment unannounced, wearing the ring she had so casually discarded months earlier. "I made the biggest mistake of my life," she began, eyes welling with carefully timed tears. "Every day without you has been punishment enough. I've changed. I understand now what I threw away." I listened without interrupting, noticing how she monitored my reactions, adjusting her approach based on my expressions. The performance was flawless, vulnerable yet dignified, repentant yet still appealing to the history we shared. "I appreciate you coming," I finally said when she finished, "but this conversation is 5 months too late." "So that's it?" Indignation crept into her voice. 5 years together means nothing now? "It meant everything then," I corrected her. "That's why I would never have removed my ring for 30 days to explore options." Her expression hardened, the vulnerability vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. "You'll regret this decision. No one will ever know you like I do." I smiled genuinely for the first time in our conversation. "That's precisely the point." I closed the door with the same quiet confidence with which I had rebuilt my life. No drama, no raised voices, just the definitive sound of a chapter ending. Through the door, I heard her final attempt at manipulation, a sob just loud enough to be heard, followed by silence when it produced no response. Later that evening, I received a text from a woman I had been seeing casually. Nothing serious yet, but built on a foundation of mutual respect and honesty. As I replied, I realized the 30 seconds it had taken to remove my ex-wife from my life had been the most valuable investment I'd ever made. Not because it had brought me to someone new, but because it had brought me back to myself. A man who understood his worth and refused to accept anything less than the respect he deserved. Brewery. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.